Everything, literally everything, changed in a matter of seconds. Behind the carefully manicured press conferences and those perfectly lit media days, there is a completely different reality happening. A reality the league absolutely doesn't want you looking at too closely. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I want you to listen very carefully to what we are about to unpack today, because we're not just reading headlines. We are peeling back the layers of a franchise locked in a desperate, totally unseen war. We're stepping straight into the shadows of Hallis Hall, where the turf is literally stained with legacy. And the rulebook? Well, it seems to have been quietly rewritten for one specific team.
So ask yourself this: why is the NFL terrified of the Chicago Bears? Just let that question hang in the air for a second. Really feel the weight of it. Because consider how incredibly rare it is for an entire multi-billion-dollar operation to seemingly brace for the impact of a single franchise. Behind the closed doors of the Payton Center, right in the middle of rookie minicamp, a much larger, way more sinister narrative is quietly unfolding. And it's a narrative built entirely on ghosts, on suffocating pressure, and on a statistical impossibility that defies literally every single law of professional football. The truth isn't found in the broad strokes, it's found in the microscopic details, it's found in the absolute deafening silence of a referee's whistle.
But before we dive completely into the dark mechanics of this franchise's reality, you've got a choice to make. This isn't your standard football breakdown. This is an exclusive invitation to uncover the truths the league is actively hiding in plain sight. So hit that subscribe button to join us here at NFL Nexus. Like this explainer so we can push this investigation right past the algorithm's barriers. Comment your verdict below as the evidence unfolds. And if you really want to be on the front lines of this movement, go ahead and become a channel member today. Stand with us as we expose what's actually happening on the gridiron.
Section 1. Whispers on the Turf.
Okay, so let's begin our descent inside the Payton Center. The doors are locked to the outside world. The air conditioning is humming, but the atmosphere in there is unbelievably thick. It's only the very first day of rookie minicamp, yet the colossal, crushing shadow of the 2025 season is looming over every single solitary step these players are taking. Because they aren't just running drills, they're fighting for survival in a system that demands absolute perfection. Let me paint a picture for you of the final play of a grueling 7-on-7 practice. I want you to visualize this in agonizingly slow, cinematic detail. The snap. Former Western Kentucky quarterback Maverick McIver drops back. Notice his footwork, the subtle, deliberate transfer of weight from the back foot to the front. The mechanics are just perfectly fluid. He steps up into the pocket as the imaginary rush bears down, and with this violent flick of the wrist, he launches a high-arcing pass down the sideline. It's like time just suspends. The ball cuts through the heavy indoor air, traveling exactly 30 yards downfield, spinning in a tight, unyielding spiral. And there, tracking it over his shoulder with the sheer desperation of a man fighting for his professional life, is veteran tryout player Scotty Miller. He extends his arms. He secures the leather right at the apex of its trajectory. He hits the turf hard, coming down with the deepest completion of the entire day. And this isn't just a simple catch in minicamp, right? This is a profound statement from a man who already owns a Super Bowl ring from his time in Tampa Bay. Offensive coordinator Ben Johnson is watching all of this very closely from a few yards away. He knows Miller's history with receivers coach Antoine Randall L. He sees that elite, untamed speed. He sees the quickness out of the break. It's a very intriguing flash of lightning in what is otherwise a very dark room. But here's the thing. For every single moment of veteran brilliance, there is a terrifying glimpse of rookie vulnerability. Let's totally obsess over a specific 3-on-3 drill for a minute, because we need to break down the precise, microscopic geometry of the field here. It showcases the razor-thin margin between a successful defensive stop and an absolute downright catastrophe. So, you've got veteran defensive back Dante Manning and first-round pick Dylan Thieneman on the field together. The snap happens, the route combination develops in a fraction of a second. Manning's assignment is explicitly clear. He is taking the flat. He bites down hard on the underneath route, driving his cleats into the turf. In that exact agonizing fraction of a second, Thieneman's brain has to process like a dozen shifting variables. He's looking at the receiver's hips, trying to recognize the depth. He's supposed to climb as the corner. He's supposed to fluently replace the space vacated by Manning. But he hesitates, just a blink, and they get crossed up. A miscommunication of mere inches in spatial awareness. The result? You've got a receiver running absolutely terrifyingly free behind the deep secondary. Now, in the unforgiving ecosystem of the NFL, that half second of crossed wires, actually scratch that, it's not even a mistake, it is a fatal wound, a game-losing vulnerability. The tension of that blown coverage just hangs over the practice facility like a thick, dark cloud.
And I want you to listen to the words of the rookie himself. He said, "As of right now, I'm playing some strong safety. Just still understanding what the free safety is doing." Wow. This isn't just your standard media quote. This is a direct window into the overwhelming, suffocating psychological pressure being placed squarely on Dylan Thienemann's shoulders. The coaching staff isn't just asking him to go out and play football, they are demanding he entirely rewire his basic instincts. They want him to master the violent, box-heavy, run-stopping responsibilities of the strong safety spot, a position that demands instant physical confrontation, all while simultaneously downloading the incredibly complex, deep field geometry and center field reads of the free safety position. Every single rep he takes out there is a life-or-death battle for his place in this intricate defense. He is quite literally drowning in tactical information, desperately trying to find the surface before the ruthless regular season begins.
And then, when you look away from the complex, deep coverages, you hit the gritty, unglamorous reality of life in the trenches. You've got undrafted free agent tight end Hayden Large out there dropping a pass in 7-on-7. The ball just hits the turf with a dull thud. But you know what? Nobody panics. Nobody screams. Because Large wasn't brought to Chicago to delicately catch footballs down the seam. He, along with third-round pick Sam Roosh, was brought in for a much more brutal, punishing purpose. Run blocking. We're talking pure, unfiltered violence at the point of attack. Large is an Iowa product, a man whose leadership and toughness are literally the stuff of legend back in Iowa City. He wasn't necessarily the most vocal player in the locker room, but he was absolutely the guy others blindly followed into the dark. These players are here to get dirty, to bury their face masks violently into the chests of oncoming linebackers, to move grown men against their will. It's a grim, highly physical, punishing requirement to play in this specific run-first offense.
Section 2. The weight of 54.
Now, everything we just talked about, the physical struggles on the turf, they are absolutely nothing. And I mean nothing compared to the crushing, suffocating psychological weight of legacy in Chicago. This franchise doesn't just honor its past, it wears it like a heavy, iron suit of armor. Just think about the numbers moving across the practice field right now. Slowly, deliberately, the ghosts of Bears' past are physically manifesting in the present. Josh Kreutz is out there wearing number 57. Take a second to process that. That's the exact number his father, the legendary, notoriously terrifying center Olin Kreutz, wore while anchoring the line for over a decade. Jai Williams, he's strapped into number 71, the iconic number worn by his father, James Big Cat Williams. And Dylan Thienemann, he's wearing 31, which is a heavy, deeply personal tribute to his older brothers, Jake and Brennan, carrying his family's established NFL legacy directly on his own back. These rookies, they aren't just wearing fabric. They are wearing deep, unyielding history. They are walking onto the field carrying the literal, heavy spirits of the men who bled on this exact same grass decades ago. But then, there's this number. Brian Urlacher. Look, the gravity of this specific moment simply cannot be overstated. Longtime equipment manager Tony Medlin reached deep into the vault. He pulled out a number that hasn't officially been retired, but make no mistake, it has been enshrined in the minds and hearts of millions of fans worldwide. And he handed number 54 to rookie center Logan Jones. Methodically, we have to contrast the towering, monolithic legacy of what that number actually means in the pantheon of football against who just got it. Let's walk through this timeline to put it into perspective. Back in 2000, Brian Urlacher arrives and immediately wins Defensive Rookie of the Year, single-handedly changing the speed of the linebacker position forever. By 2005, he isn't just good, he's named the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He becomes the terrifying centerpiece of a defense that fundamentally rewired how opponents even called their offensive plays. By 2018, his legacy is permanently immortalized with an induction into the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Now, fast forward 2 decades. To December 2025, you have a kid from Iowa, Logan Jones, who wins the Remington Trophy as the nation's absolute best collegiate center. He's incredibly athletic, he's a proven captain, but he is entirely unproven in the scorching fires of the NFL. And then, in May 2026, he is handed that legendary, iconic 54. The expectations aren't just high for him, they are astronomical. Just listen to how Jones himself speaks about this immense burden. He said, "It lets everyone think like, oh, that was Brian Urlacher's number. So it's kind of supporting his memory and letting everybody see the legacy he left." He knows. He knows exactly whose ghost he is carrying onto that field. Every single time he snaps the football, every time he looks down at the digits on his chest, he sees the shadow of a first ballot Hall of Famer staring right back at him. It is a terrifying yet beautiful honor. And the harsh reality is, he doesn't have a single second to be intimidated by all that history, because standing right in front of him is a high-stakes, brutally physical battle for the starting center position. On one side, you have the rookie, Logan Jones, super high football IQ, freakishly athletic, but again,
entirely untested against the massive 300-pound monsters of NFL defensive lines. On the other side, the veteran, Garrett Bradbury. Established, deeply experienced, Bradbury knows every single dark trick in the book. He knows the hidden holds, the precise hand placement, the sheer leverage-based violence required in the interior of the line. The suspense surrounding this positional battle is just immense. Whoever wins this violent trench war will be the man responsible for snapping the ball to a franchise quarterback. There is zero room for error here.
Section 3. The Silent Whistles.
But while these internal roster battles reach fiercely on the grass of Hallis Hall, there's a much darker external narrative wrapping itself around this franchise. We need to abruptly pivot from the practice field to the boardrooms of the league. 678. Let that number sink in for a second, because the terrifying data behind this specific number reveals an anomaly so stark it has fueled whispers of a league-wide conspiracy that the NFL absolutely refuses to acknowledge. 678 yards. That is the league-low penalty yards called against Chicago Bears opponents during the entire grueling 2025 season. I really want you to think about that with deep, unsettling suspicion. An entire NFL team operating with former #1 overall pick Caleb Williams at quarterback, a profoundly elusive player who constantly forces defenses into a state of absolute panic, somehow, inexplicably, watch the referees swallow their whistles week after agonizing week. Opposing defenses were allowed to hold on the edges. They were allowed to grab jerseys in the secondary. They were allowed to heavily interfere. And those yellow flags, they stayed firmly buried deep in the officials' pockets.
Section 4. A System Against Them.
Now, analysts and fans alike argue this isn't just a bad break. This isn't just a couple of missed, subjective calls on a random Sunday afternoon. What we are looking at here is a deliberate, statistical impossibility. Because the numbers do not lie. Let's drag through this data year by agonizing year to truly understand the sheer magnitude of this anomaly. In 2022, the Bears ranked 32nd in opponent penalty yards, dead last in the NFL. In 2023, they ranked 32nd again, dead last. In 2024, there was a slight, miraculous bump up to 26th. And then, in 2025, right back to 32nd, dead last. With just 678 yards over a full 17-game season. Do you understand the mathematical improbability of finishing dead last in 3 out of 4 years? This happened across entirely different coaching staffs. It happened across completely different offensive schemes. It happened with different sets of wide receivers running entirely different routes. Critics and analysts argue this is far beyond random chance. They point to an unprecedented, almost algorithmic pattern orchestrated by the men in stripes. The league, of course, would have you believe it's simply a flaw in the team's execution. They casually ask, are the receivers just not drawing enough contact? Come on. Fans and analysts are left asking, do we honestly believe that? Look, in the NBA, maybe you can say a team just doesn't physically drive to the paint enough to shoot free throws. But what is the viable excuse for professional tackle football? Do we honestly believe that an entire rotating roster of world-class professional athletes simply forgot how to bait defensive backs over a 4-year span? That they completely forgot how to draw pass interference on deep routes? That the defensive lines they face week in and week out are somehow the most disciplined, rule-abiding citizens in the entire history of the sport? No way. It borders on the absurd. The excuse holds absolutely no water when you actually test it against the reality of the game.
Section 5. The Reckoning is Coming.
But you know what? Here is the absolute most terrifying part for the rest of the National Football League. Those invisible forces holding them down, the constantly swallowed whistles, the immense heavy ghosts of the past, it wasn't enough to break them. A reckoning is coming, because the team rose up in triumphant defiance anyway. Despite every single statistical anomaly working fiercely against them, despite the referees seemingly refusing to throw the flag, look at what this roster ultimately achieved. They finished an incredibly tough 2025 season with an 11-6 record. They marched straight through the absolute brutal gauntlet of the NFC North and confidently won the division crown. And then, in the ultimate act of defiance, they defeated their hated blood rival Green Bay Packers in the wild card round of the playoffs. Caleb Williams and this gritty roster didn't just beat the teams lined up in front of them, they beat the historical odds. They fought a grueling war on 2 distinct fronts and emerged victorious. And now, the 2026 season approaches like a freight train roaring in the dark. The incoming rookies are highly explosive. The current veterans are deeply desperate to prove a point. The roster has been entirely revamped and weaponized. And the chilling, undeniable realization for the rest of the league is simply this. The Chicago Bears are now far too powerful to be casually ignored. They are far too talented across the board to be penalized out of true contention. The league can no longer hide its officiating discrepancies in the quiet shadows of 678 yards. The spotlight on this team is just way too bright now. So we arrive at the ultimate overarching question, the question that is going to entirely define this upcoming regular season. Will the officials finally call the game fair in 2026, or is the fix still quietly, deeply in? I demand you hit the comments right now. Debate this massive statistical injustice. Tell us your final verdict on the swallowed whistles and the heavy ghost of number 54. Subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, become a member of NFL Nexus today, because let me tell you, the unseen war is just beginning, and we are the only ones standing here watching the front lines. I'll see you in the next explainer.